with Joe and Chelsea. We are moving on to our mental health topic now, and this week we're going to focus on women's mental health.
Yeah, so we did a mental health special for November, so that was mainly based around men. We're now going to move on to how it differs for women out there in the world, and then another 2 episodes on some advice, some evidence, and what people can be doing to kind of help their mental health. And then there's also going to be a big focus on social media.
Yes, let's get to it.
Going to explore hormones first of all.
Yeah, I think a bit of context. I think it's really important for women to understand what hormones we have in our bodies and how these change according to the stage of the menstrual cycle that you're on, and how this can ultimately affect your mood and your mental health.
Yeah, so hormones, as like a basic dictionary definition, are chemical messengers that coordinate functions of your body. So they might be made in a certain part of your body, in an organ, and it will be transported to another part of your body where it will have an impact on the cell or the part of your body that needs to change. So you're talking about sexual hormones such as
estrogen and progesterone,
and then the men's one would be testosterone.
Yeah.
But there's also hormones like insulin and ghrelin, which is a hunger hormone, insulin being a blood sugar hormone or affects blood sugar levels. So there are hormones for a lot of different things.
Functions of the body.
So they are very, very important for us, and we a lot of the time don't have control over these hormones, but we can do things to regulate them and help them do their job properly. However, this is where your mental health comes into play, because again, linking back to gut health, it can be affected by what you eat, what you're going through in your life, such as stresses. If you're a woman, what happens every month through your menstrual cycle can all affect your hormones, which then have an adverse effect on your mental health.
Yeah.
So from a woman's point of view, because believe it or not, I'm not a woman, what do you feel hormones has to play? What role do they have to play in terms of a woman's mental health, and what might some women out there not really understand, and men, about hormones in women?
Okay, so if there's one thing that I want to achieve from this podcast, is more women knowing exactly what hormone fluctuations does to your body and to your mood and your mental health, and just understanding it a bit better, so you're not confused or feeling really vulnerable or upset or alone in these feelings. Because believe it or not, every single woman goes through it. It's just part of our menstrual cycle. And listening to a podcast, again, everybody's going to be like, oh my god, she's obsessed, Dr. Mindy. Listening to her podcast, it was actually on the Diary of the CEO, and then we listened to it together, didn't we? She explains just how linked hormones are to your mood changes. So a lot of people think that when you start your period, you feel really groggy and you're tired and you just want to be left alone, when in actual fact, hormonally, it's the week before your period. So when you're due on that week before, your body naturally needs to rest. It can't deal with stress, it can't problem solve. So cortisol levels have to be super low that week before your period starts. And the reason for this is because as a woman, you are preparing to potentially hold life and grow life inside you. So there's huge changes happening to the body. And this is just something that has never been talked about. Like, you know, we do sex education at school, but who is sitting down and telling females what is going on week by week, every single month, and how that can affect how you feel and also the purpose of it. So that week before, you have a drop in estrogen and an increase in progesterone. So what this means for your mental health is you feel shit. You're really tired. You can get really emotional about things. You know, in a relationship point of view, I could get really irritable at something that you've done, and it might not be anything, you know, big. And
we've all been there, like.
yeah, you probably have. There's probably so many guys that can relate to, you know, doing something that they do all the time, and their missus has not phased by it, and then there'll be this one time she just absolutely loses her mind, and you're thinking, like, who is this woman? I don't understand. Like, this isn't anything out of the ordinary. Why are you getting so worked up about it? And from a female perspective, I'm sure there's every woman listening to this that can relate. Sometimes of the month, it's just, it is too much to be able to deal with emotionally. You know, let's use an example like clothes being put at the side of the basket instead of in the basket. Some women might get annoyed at that anyway, but it's a very like trivial thing that at certain points of the month that might be so overwhelming for a woman that she either gets really angry or annoyed at her partner, or she just breaks down and cries. And it's like, why am I getting so worked up over something so trivial and so small when usually it doesn't bother me? And to the partner, it's like what is going on? Like, you were being weird this week. This is not normal. This is not what you usually like. And so it can cause quite a lot of tension. It can also cause women, I think, to feel even more down because, like I said to you after I'd listened to this podcast, I felt like it kind of explained why I feel down and blue and agitated at certain points of the month. Like, I'm not a horrible person. I'm not just being out of character. Like, it is to do with my hormones. And I think when you understand that, you can start to forgive yourself in those moments. And you can also start to understand, okay, like, this is going to happen, and warn your partner, you know, this week I don't want to make decisions. Don't ask me, you know, what I want to have for dinner. Don't ask me if I want to do this or this. Just make the decisions because I haven't got the capacity to do it this week. And please be more considerate this week of, you know, where you put the dirty washing, for example, or, you know, other things, because I am probably going to be more sensitive. And I think that was just the biggest revelation for me, because it just explains something that you cannot control and will happen every single month. And I think it just lifts that kind of stigma away from women quite a lot.
The podcast we listened to with Dr. Mindy speaks about like you tracking your menstrual cycle with your partner on the calendar or a device, so you can kind of like see what time of the month is those kind of pinch points of emotional change and hormonal change. So like you said, you can avoid those uncomfortable conversations or arguments or moments that could be avoided or helped out if you are aware of it. So something would be good to do with your partner, just communicate that across, because as I said at the start of this podcast, there's still so much stigma around the female body and how they act, and if you're just having that
she's on the blob, it's that her time of the month,
or watch out, she's coming in today, which to some extent it has credibility because you can see it, but it's the wrong way to approach it. You need to go in with, look, you don't necessarily have to say, I know it's your time of month, but look, I can see your whole, I don't even know how to say it.
I think, like, you know, the way Dr. Mindy describes it on the podcast is being able to talk about it more. So for a male boss to go and want to know when his female members of staff, what their cycle is, Because usually when people work together or they live together, they generally sync up. That's not unusual.
Absolutely mad.
It is, isn't it? I don't actually know the science
I thought someone was winding me up, but in my previous job in Qatar, we saw it happen, and it was like, whoa.
Yeah.
So females like sync up their menstrual cycles.
Yeah. I don't know the science behind that one, but it does happen.
Crazy.
And for a male, manager or member of staff to want to know what his female colleagues or employees what their menstrual cycle is, I think that's huge, because you're not creating this is awkward, you're on your period. You're creating I need to know when your productivity is like here, and I need to know when you can't problem solve, because then I'm not going to bring you problems, or I'm not going to ask you to do difficult tasks, because I know that you are just not mentally going to be able to do it. And I think that's huge, because you're not saying that we're not capable of doing something. You're understanding what is biologically in us and that we can't control.
With that, I've got two questions to that. First one being, it's quite a hard world we live in, where you can't just kind of shut off for a week and dim down your job if you're a woman in a very high pressured job, or you're in a sector such as like being a nurse or a surgeon, or things where the stress really never stops. So how would you combat that? How would that be?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Dr. Minnie talks about in her podcast is like there's still such a huge way to go, but where you do have the ability to have more autonomy over your work pattern and, the hours that you work, being able to not necessarily stop working, because some women own their own businesses, and that's not, like you said, some women are, surgeons, doctors, they're working crazy hours and they can't dictate when somebody needs surgery, but I think just having more of an open conversation, like just us talking about it now, there's going to be some people listening to this and going, oh my god, that's really interesting, and then they tell somebody else, and it starts to make it, maybe they tell their husband, and then the husband tells, and the more that people start to hear about it, I think the more acceptance there will be. I don't think, realistically, everybody's, all women are going to be able to take a back seat the week before their period and just chill out a little bit. But I do think there's room to appreciate the mental effects that a complete dip in estrogen and a rise in progesterone does to a female, mentally as well as physically, and being able to work with that, it has its strengths as well. Like as soon as, the first day or two of you being on your period, your estrogen shoots right back up, and some women will know this, they'll have experienced a huge buzz, and they feel so clear, they feel like, they might go and do like a massive clean, they might go and organise some cupboards, they might go and solve that problem that's been playing on their mind for the past couple of weeks at work. Like they suddenly have this rush of energy and like being able to problem solve and creativity, and again, that's all to do with hormones.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the second question was, would every woman react the same way then? Like the week before your period, is every woman gonna be able to struggle? Are they gonna struggle with the same sort of things, or does it vary between women?
I think it will vary, yes. There will be some women that are so stressed and their body is under so much pressure that they actually don't have periods. That's a very common thing. And I'm not sure what the general rise and fall of hormones are for women that are so out of sync that they're no longer having periods. And I'm not talking about menopause here, I'm talking about younger women that, through mental stress or physical stress, their body is in such a state that it stops being able to have a very normal, healthy menstrual cycle. And, Dr. Mindy talks about working with women where she gets back their periods through, you know, food and fasting. But I think generally, yes, most women will experience, if not all women, a slight drop in how they feel.
Yeah.
When estrogen drops in a woman, so does your energy and so does your ability to be able to deal with stress. And that is just biological. There is no, you know, for some or not, like biologically, estrogen drops and that just naturally makes you feel less able to cope with life. Interestingly, when you get a rise in progesterone, you also crave carbs. Now, this is probably something some women are like, is this normal? Is it not?
Yeah, carbs for mobs.
Yeah. Completely normal, because in order for your body to make progesterone, it needs carbs. And that is why women in general will crave, specifically before their period, that week before. But I mean, yeah, like we've touched upon hormones a little bit there, but I think obviously mental health is so much bigger than that, isn't it? But I just think it's so important to get this out there at the start, because I feel like women already have a higher baseline before you put, you know, depression on top of that. So already once a month, women are having a dip in energy and in being able to deal with stress and in their mood anyway. That's just biological.
Yeah.
So I just think it's really important, because, you know, depression and anxiety is so big, and it's just, you know, there's probably not one person you know that hasn't dealt with some sort of mental health issues. I just think it's really important for women to be able to understand that there is a link between your menstrual cycle and your dip in, you know, peaks and troughs of hormones, as there is with your mental health.
Yeah, it's a really good point, because everyone's been there where they've just had those low days, men and women, and there's no real explanation of why until you start digging a little bit deeper. But you've just said there the amount of women that will blame themselves, and they'll play this story in their head that they're not good enough because they're feeling a certain way. They don't know why they're feeling a certain way. But you raising awareness of what you've just said there will potentially help some women, because they'll think, okay, well, I do feel low, but I've just checked my calendar of the month and it's normally this time where I'm due on, so that I can accept that. I can work on that. Whereas if it's not on that time and you're just having it out of the blue, that's when you can start to investigate that a bit further and take it a bit more seriously. But I think you're definitely right, just getting that message out there that women are going to expect that every month, and it's okay to kind of get those feelings, because you can't control it.
You can't, no, it's biological.
You mentioned earlier about the menopause. Now, I'm probably one of many people, men, some women as well, that don't know what the menopause is fully. So could you explain what the menopause is in a bite-sized kind of explanation?
Yeah, I hope I don't butcher this.
And then try and explain the link between mental health and the menopause, because it seems to be a very, very strong link towards women's mental health or even their mortality. So.
Yeah, so this is, if you take away anything from this podcast, especially middle-aged older women, you know, so if you've got any mums, aunts, nans, and you think this is relatable, try and open up some sort of dialogue or conversation with them.
Yeah.
So the menopause is what every single woman will go through, and that's when she stops the production of her eggs. So a woman goes from being fertile to infertile, essentially. She can't have kids anymore. So there's no more eggs that she produces, which means that she doesn't have a monthly cycle. So she doesn't go through ovulation, she doesn't go through her period, she doesn't go through that 4-week cycle. It also means that there is a complete change in hormones, because the hormones that we have and the fluctuation in the hormones that we have relate to the menstrual cycle and obviously the functions that we need in order to go through that 4-week cycle. So for some very, very, very unfortunate women, this actually happens earlier than it should, but usually it can happen from 50 onwards.
Right.
Some women, unfortunately, do go through it earlier. And the process of the menopause, which this surprised me when I found this out, again, the Dr. Mindy podcast on the Diary of the CEO, I would recommend any woman, every woman, to go and listen to it, because it is such an eye-opener for women and their menstrual cycles and their menopause, which obviously all links to mental health as well. So the menopause can last up to 10 years. The process of going, from being fertile to not producing eggs anymore. And this 10 years for a woman is, I'm going to say, brutal. And I don't think there's any other way to explain it other than brutal. So you are having a switch in your levels of hormones, because everything has to balance back out again to work for a body that's no longer needing to ovulate or have a period or anything like that. So you're having to switch to a new set of hormones and new levels of hormones, and it takes a long time for the body to reset. As you go through this, you've got, if you've ever been around an older woman where she's getting hot flushes and you're pretty cold, or most people are pretty cold, and she's there like asking you to open the window, or has anybody got a fan, or so this is another symptom of the menopause, really intense hot flashes, which a lot of women describe as being very, very painful. Now, the mental side of this is what I really want to talk about. The kind of mental health that deteriorates in women that are going through the menopause it's just shocking that I can't believe that I've only just found out about it listening to this podcast, this year, and I'm 29 now. But women between, I think it's like 45 and 60, is the highest percentage of suicide for females, and this directly correlates to the menopause. So women can feel completely different. They don't recognize themselves anymore. They can feel moody, they can feel irritable, they can feel like they don't have any purpose, they don't like the same things that they used to like, they can just feel so sad and alone in their new body, in the way that it feels. And to someone from the outside, this could look like, oh, fucking hell, she's on one today, in a work situation. Or to a partner, it might be like, you have changed. Like, I do not recognize the person that you are. Why are you so miserable? Why are you so stressed about this? Why are you so negative about everything? But on the inside, for a female, it's just biological. Like, this switch in hormones and not being able to produce anymore causes absolute carnage inside your body and your mind. And for a lot of women, it becomes so unbearable, and there's no support because it's not talked about enough.
It's not talked about.
That the only way for them is suicide, and it's really, really sad that happens. And I know Davina McCall is a huge advocate for menopause now. I think she's written a book, and she really, advertises the importance of talking about it and learning about it. And I think I'm going to stress that as well. Like, it is so important, because that directly links to mental health. And I think for a woman going through menopause, I would love to know the science on this. I don't actually know the statistics, but I'm assuming the statistics of women going through menopause and their mental health, I'm assuming it's not great. Percentage of women feeling depressed during that time, I imagine, is very high.
Yeah. What you said about the reproduction thing, so just to make it clear, once you've had your menopause, you can no longer reproduce when it's finished. So when you've come out your menopause.
I think even when you're going through it, it's
Yeah, so like it's like a change of the change of the guard, but it's not the right analogy, is it?
No.
That basically you come out the other side and you're a different person because now your hormones have changed and you can no longer reproduce.
Yeah.
So going back to that point of, I think a lot of people's mental health struggles, men and women, is a lack of purpose or a lack of fulfillment in their life or a lack of direction, and they get lost in this swirling kind of tornado of doom and depression and no way out. And this just sounds like something that is going to have a massive impact on women, because your biological reason to be on this planet is to reproduce and keep the human race going.
Yeah.
That natural primitive thing is stripped away from you.
Yeah.
So yes, you might have your kids to bring up, so that's your focus, or you might have a good job, but that is going to have a massive impact on your mental health.
Definitely.
The way to concentrate,
even
the way to focus, to be creative, to reason with why the purpose of being it. So I think you have it rough, like you've got to struggle through it.
And
but
I think
there is a light at the tunnel though.
Yeah, I mean, women that get through it, when they're on the other side of it, I'm just going from what Dr. Mindy has advertised as a woman that's gone through it. It's brilliant. Like you're you again. You're you're realigned. But it's that process of going through it, and it takes a very long time, and it can be a very lonely and isolating place for a woman who is either on her own or is around people that don't understand or won't ask the question. And I think the really nice thing about listening to this podcast is then being able to talk to my mum, and my mum is one of those people that has unfortunately gone through it younger, and a lot of these things that Dr. Mindy was saying was resonating. Like, confusion is another one. The amount of times my mum would repeat herself, and I would be so offended and so upset by it. Like, why? I've just told you this. Why have you not listened to me? But it's all part of the symptoms. They may see the negative first, or they may feel down more than they're happy, or they may starting to seem like a completely different person.
Yeah. And
it was interesting because I had this conversation with her, and she was talking about something to do with her partner, and I was like, well, I know why you're like that. And I could tell she was almost a bit like, oh, here we go, why? And then I opened the dialogue about menopause and how it affects women mentally, and you could see the tears in her eyes, and it was almost like for the first time somebody could see her and kind of understand and verbalize what she'd been feeling. And that, I think, has really changed our relationship, and it certainly stopped me going straight to the, oh my God, why is she not listening to me? Or, it's about me, and understanding more what she's going through.
Yeah, I think you're right with like how fast paced the world is now, and how quick we are to make judgments on people. And I think it's so important that people you have around you to bring with you on your journey to wherever you're going. But we're very quickly to judge of, they're a drain to me, or they're someone who's showing the negative all the time. And you have to make that conscious decision of who you bring with you on your journey. But there's always something happening behind closed doors that you need to be aware of, whether it is something physiological going on or it is mentally going on. You look at going back to like at school, any bullies out there, or anyone who's treating someone in a negative way, there's something going on with themselves mentally first, isn't there? So it is linked to so many different things, mental health, and you need to be aware of everyone has their struggles. You need to take that into consideration before making your judgment, and it's whether you have the confidence to approach that person and talk to them in a professional and supportive environment, or you just go and say, oh, why are you being annoying again, why are you being negative, like,
why are you on your period?
Yeah. And just being like, okay, well, I've seen that, I've observed that, I'll speak to her in a private setting and then go from there.
Yeah.
But no, it's really interesting. I think a couple of things we can kind of bring this conversation to a close on is two things that I've picked up from obviously being with you and being around different women in my life is the communication part of allowing you to communicate your feelings and your emotions without just doing it through your actions. So mentally, for us to, something we listen to on a podcast and we've started to do it, we need to do it a little bit more, is when someone's had a tough day, or they're struggling mentally, or their emotions are getting too much for them, we talk about how your day's been, and you ask the question again, but also like, what percentage are you being able to give to this relationship or friendship? So
Brene Brown.
Yeah. So something like, I've had a really good day, I've been buzzing, I've achieved loads, I've come home, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to cook dinner, I could go do a workout, we could film some afters, and I walk through the door and immediately I see you're not at the same level I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of me getting annoyed and frustrated and you getting more upset by seeing me be a different level to you, we've learned to communicate that, well, I'm really sorry, I've not really had a great day, I've struggled with this, I'm only working at a 12% at the moment.
Mm.
Whereas I'd be like, well, I can make up that other 50% of our relationship. We did pretty much 38% of your.
About?
So if I give 50% of this
it gets to 100%.
Okay, let's say that. Okay, that way then, 88%.
Yeah.
Or we're both 50-50 in this relationship.
No, you're getting confused there.
No, I'm not getting confused. I'm just saying a different example. It could be that way, or it could be getting to 100%.
I'm confused.
Yeah, so yeah, don't worry.
No, because the listeners would quite probably like
what I'm saying is a relationship with your partner is 100%, but you give 50%, I give 50%.
But you're not always going to be.
But you're not going to be always
yes, yeah.
So at the moment I'm working at 12%. So I'd say to you, well, my 50%'s at 50%, 100%. So I would give your extra 38%.
Okay, right. I'm going to make this simple because I feel like you're confused.
I'm not.
You're not.
I know both ways, but that's how I look at it.
I know that's how you look at it, but you're really explaining it a very long way. I think it's quite confusing. So
you're just doing
a relationship is 50-50. Yes, together 100%. But you don't get annoyed. I'm explaining it in a simple way. So you come through the door, and I might be let's make it whole numbers, a 20%, and you're feeling really great, and you're like, do you know what? I can come in at an 80%. I've got my 50%, and I can give an extra 30 if you're only working at 20. But then she talks about how when you might be at a 20 as well, and I'm also at 20, maybe something traumatic's happened, or you're both just going through a really difficult time, that's when you would sit down together and talk about how you get through it while still being kind to each other.
Yeah.
Which I think is really huge because, we're quite lucky usually we're not both feeling down at the same time.
Yeah.
But for those couples where there's, they're both struggling, it really is important to be able to communicate how you can be kind to each other, because it is very easy to snap and assume what somebody's thinking and get yourselves into a bit of a state when really you need to be supporting each other through it. Which kind of leads on to, if you don't have, you're not with anybody, speaking to, maybe somebody that you're close with or that you trust, or professional help if you really are struggling mentally.
Yeah. There's being alone and then there's being lonely, isn't there? Which is slightly different.
Yeah.
But for both you, there is always support out there. But yeah, good chat about mental health there in women.
Yeah. Obviously, I know that, mental health expands outside of, your menstrual cycle and menopause, but I just think it's really important to touch upon that so women can at least start to understand themselves a little bit more.
Yeah.
And we'll obviously explore mental health a bit more in the next episode.
Yeah, next episode will be around like social media and other factors that affect your mental health.
Yeah.
But for this week, guys at home and on the screens and listening, a request we have this week is for anyone out there who has kind of experienced what we've talked about today, with seeing that in their partner or seeing that in a friend or going through it themselves in terms of the menstrual cycle and the hormonal changes. If you could open up a dialogue on our comment section, so saying something like, yeah, I've experienced that myself, or if you have any questions around it, like what can I do to help this, or I know someone, how do I speak to them about it?
Yeah.
Anything that you feel like you can interact with this conversation would be great.
For men, I think a task for men out there that have women in their life, if you're with somebody, ask them to write down their cycle on the calendar so that you can see it, or put it into your phone. And if you have any older women in your life that you've noticed asking for a fan or getting kind of hot flushes in kind of normal temperature situations, maybe open up a dialogue and ask them how they're feeling. They're okay.
Yeah, thank you for tuning, guys.
See you soon.
See you soon.